Hi everyone, Michael Sandler here, best-selling author and your host on Inspire Nation. Check out our website where we'll be posting podcasts, tips, videos, blogs, and more at inspirenationshow.com. Today we have a very auspicious guest. His name is Dr. Roger Teel. Roger is a speaker and a global spiritual leader. Throughout storytelling, humor, and practical spirituality, Dr. Teel's transforming messages help empower people and lead them to their limitless potential to live effectively and joyously. Dr. Teel holds a degree in psychology and religion, a Doctor of Divinity degree, and a Doctor of Religious Science degree. He serves as senior minister and spiritual director of Mile High Church with more than 30,000 members and friends in Colorado and has been featured in the New York Times, USA Today, New York Magazine, and Publishers Weekly, which calls his writing joyously entertaining. Today we're going to spread some joy and talk about finding true happiness. I think joy is something we all seek, and when seeking it, it often eludes us. I'm leading the witness here, but we'll be talking about how joy is an inside job, not a Mercedes, and how to find it in each and every one of us. Welcome to the show, Roger. Are you ready to shine?
I absolutely am, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show, and a big woohoo! So before we dive into things, I got into your book, and I was extremely intrigued by a story that happened to you very early on in your life. Can you tell us what happened to you at age 6?
Oh, yeah, it was a defining thing. I was laying out on the grass looking up at the sky in my parents' front yard, and all of a sudden, I didn't know what had happened. I was no more, it seemed. I was the sky. I was the clouds. I was the sun. And it was, I thought I had died, really. And I was filled with vibration. Once I came back into my sense of the local self, I actually remember clutching the grass just to get my bearings. And I hid this away. I didn't know what had happened, but it planted in me a desire for spirituality that I hadn't had. Even as a little kid, I asked to go to churches around the place, and my parents were dumbfounded by that. But I think it just cast me on my life journey, Michael.
What do you think happened?
I think it was a mini mystical experience. I don't know if it was mini or maxi, actually, but just it's one of those things. As a child, I didn't have the barriers in the way. I hadn't learned enough to get so anchored in this time-space dimension that I guess I was available to the larger reality that we're all a part of and not so locked in my separate self concept yet.
Ooh, that sounds powerful because that makes me think of how do we keep kids there?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the awakening process. I think we're all seeking to actually return to that sort of a native understanding of our oneness and our immersion in the totality of life. But, we become adults, as it were, and we get anchored in our sense of a separate identity, separate from everybody else, separate from creation. And we feel a hollowness, and I think we desperately seek to come back to that state of attunement.
Well, let's dive right into that. That kind of skips us ahead, but why not? So I was thinking about this and doing an interview on joy and happiness, and I can hear people out there going, I want to be happy. Yeah, okay, that makes some sense. But, I've been taught when you grow up, you got to be serious, you got to buckle down, you got to work hard, you got to stop being a kid. So what's the big deal? Why do we? It's such a strange question, but what's the importance of joy and happiness?
Oh, I think it's essential because our true sense of wholeness and our true power comes out of this inner joy that I write about, and as well a sense of creativity and natural independence. You see, when we're unhappy, when we're feeling hollow, when we don't know who we really are, then we're easily manipulated by forces around us that say, we've got the thing that'll make you happy. You could buy this, do this, and then you'll be happy. And we're easily swayed. But when we have what's called the pearl of great price, a deep sense of joy that nobody can give us nor take away from us, then indeed we make our choices from this inner strength. I think it's the key to living a powerful, peaceful, and a wonderful life, Michael.
So how did you first start to find this inner strength or this place?
Well, I had to experience what I think a lot of folks experience, and that is looking in all the wrong places. Accomplishment. We sometimes think that accomplishment or money or prestige or meeting the right person or everything like that, and even substances and things like that, will bring us true and lasting happiness. And eventually we discover that it doesn't. And that can be a very big downer, and yet it's an essential realization that those things don't provide it. But you see, that's the pleasure-pain syndrome that a whole lot of folks in our society are into, seeking experiences or outcomes that generate this sort of a temporary pleasure, and then doing everything they can do to manipulate that and keep it in place. But then when it doesn't stay in place, because who can accomplish that entirely, we experience its opposite, and that's pain. And then in the feeling of that pain, we tend to turn to numbing that pain, and thus the addictive cycle in our society. But what I'm talking about is a joy much deeper and a part of us than this pleasure-pain. But as long as we stay in this pleasure-pain syndrome, we're never going to find this true power and this true joy that's in us.
So for yourself, was it back before you got into ministry? When did you first, when did the rubber hit the road, and how did that happen for you?
It's interesting. It was in a wounding, and I also write about that in the book. I was in my early 30s and about to get married after a 3-year relationship with a beautiful lady, and she essentially dumped me after the holidays, and we had planned on announcing our engagement, and she left me a note saying, "It's over, don't call me." And I tried to call her, and her mother said, "No, she's serious. I don't know what happened to her, but she's serious. You're going to have to go on in your life." And I was just crushed. I grieved. I couldn't believe what was happening.
So you'd been, because I read the story in there, you're ready to announce your engagement. Is that it?
Absolutely. We had discussed it before the holidays. Then she went away for the holidays, came back different, and so I just had to. I was hurt. I grieved. I didn't sleep. Then I got angry, and I began to tell people I hated her, and she was crazy anyway, and I'm glad it didn't happen. And I was in a bad space. I was doing a number on myself, and every aspect of my life was suffering, until a friend of mine, and we were having a beer, and he said, "You know what? You teach these life-transforming principles. Have you ever thought of using them?" Ooh. I wanted to knock him off his bar stool. I wanted to knock him off his bar stool, but I knew in my heart of hearts he was right. I knew there was something more in that experience. And I want to keep this short, but basically I began to discover, and when I opened to seeing more than being a victim, I began to realize that I had a closed and protected heart. And
what does that
as
mean?
Loving as I was, my heart wasn't open to people, and people couldn't get to me. I stayed a workaholic, and I managed and controlled my relationships, and I guess she had realized that. And then also she had realized our relationship was more of a dependency relationship than a really grounded one. And so I went on a journey when I had that realization about my heart, and through some wonderful facilitation and support by masters on this planet, I had the incredible experience of my heart chakra flying open, and a sense of the unconditional, infinite, omnipresent love of this universe just poured forth through me and over me. And Michael, I got to tell you, I knew a joy and a peace and a wholeness in that moment that words don't adequately describe. And it was then that I began to realize what life is all about, that it's not about the outer stuff, although it's okay to grow and have those things, but life is about a deep communion with love and a joy that is in us. It's a spiritual quality within us. It's not going to be found by trying to get it. We've already got it, but we've lost track of it. And we can get back to that. And that was the foundation for the joy that I write about.
And I'm guessing that was the motivation for writing the book?
Well, I've been in this sort of a new thought progressive ministry for 40 years now. And I wanted to write a book for a long time. But, I think there's always a right time when things are ripe and the synthesis of so many of my life experiences. And so that's what called me to write it at this time.
So if we jump back in time, first off, what got you into ministry?
It was, I think, that thing that happened to me at 6 years old. I continued to search, and more as I entered into my teens, what I was hearing from traditional religions did not jive with what just seemed intrinsic to me. I think what had been downloaded into me during that sort of mystical experience at 6, and so I was a searcher, and I began to search beyond the standard approaches, and then I discovered what's called New Thought, which is a blend of East and West, and basically incorporates the highest and best in all faith paths. and is also a practical kind of spirituality that people can use. And so it's been my joy to grow in that and to help others in that, and to see that there's really another way than to embrace one's true spirituality.
So it's fascinating because I'd gone to church for many years, and I found something lacking in traditional church for me. And I read about your church. I read a little bit about New Thought, and I'm like, where has this been?
That's what most people say, is I didn't know there was anything like this in the world.
So what is Mile High Church? What's New Thought? And how is this both the same and different as everything else?
Well, I pray that this book that I wrote, This Life is Joy, is a re-articulation, maybe in using my own life experiences and others that I've cherished, but also in maybe some more modern parlance that is a basis for new thought, what we call New Thought. And my particular branch of New Thought is called the Science of Mind and Spirit, and its founder is Ernest Holmes. But all of the New Thought branches, whether they be Unity or Divine Science or the many independent branches that are out there, they all teach a basic truth, and that is oneness. That's the foundation, that there's only one life, intelligence, source, call it whatever you will, it's beyond all names. And all of life is happening within it, and we are one with it now. And thus that means that we are spiritual beings, every one of us. We don't have to become spiritual.
Let me slow you down for 1 second. So I want to dive into this rabbit hole as carefully as we can. So you're saying, first off, for clarity, there is no God out there.
There is no out there, nor any being out there. We're living within life, within the spirit.
The kingdom of heaven is within.
Absolutely. And this is what quantum science is so powerfully articulating as well nowadays. And that is that matter is not ultimate reality. Matter emerges out of an invisible field of potential and intelligence and energy. And this is what the mystics have been trying to tell us for years.
Fascinating. So it's all within us, and we need to figure out how to connect within, to go within.
Absolutely. And to know who we really are is the beginning point. And that is that we're not separate, abandoned beings. We are activities of this divine life, and we are actually beings of light. We associate with and identify with our bodies and the stuff of our lives, but we're so much more than that. We are spirit. We are eternal beings as well. And we're an adventure that the one life, call it God or whatever, is seeking to have by means of us.
So what are we here for? Small question.
I think we are here to express God.
Ooh.
We are here to be a unique way that the universe is enjoying and unfolding itself. Just like there are hundreds and hundreds of variety of roses, the universe wasn't satisfied with just one rose. It had to expound upon that. So each and every one of us is that. I ask my students, so you're here to express the joy of God. Are you showing God a good time?
Oh, so many directions we could go with that. So what you're saying, in a sense, is if we're just living I don't want to say 9 to 5 is bad, but a 9 to 5, a bread and butter existence. That's not necessarily bad either. But if we're not living our full potential, maybe that's it. That we're not showing God necessarily a good time.
I think there's an urge within us all that comes forth to fulfill ourselves in a way that's unique to everyone, and that's that spiritual urge. It's different in every one of us. It's simply more about the doing in life and being. What am I here to be? And what kind of light am I here to shine? What brings me deep joy in the doing? Or where does my deep joy guide me to express in this life? So many folks are seeking that. And quite frankly, back to the addictive cycle, I think a lot of addiction is people striving to find this maximum life within them, striving to find wholeness, trying to find peace, the bliss and the joy, and they're using it by artificial means. But there's a holistic center of joy and power and bliss within every one of us.
So let's dive into that. How do we start to find this oneness? How do we start to find this joy? Your book, This Life is Joy, gives some great ways to do this, but if you can cut to the heart of it for us, how do we start this process?
Well, first of all, when it says in the Bible, "Be still and know that I am God," which is really better phrase, "Be still and know the I am that is God," is we need to slow down and have some times of stillness, whether you call it meditation or prayer or whatever. As long as we stay at the surface of our life and surface thinking and surface living, we are distanced from who we really are. So it begins by having some times of getting still. And there are a lot of guided meditations and prayer tapes and things like that that can assist someone in beginning to cultivate an activated inner life. So we get still. And then I believe it's powerful to open the heart and to place your awareness at the center of your chest and begin to relax there and feel the quickening and the warming and just sink into this love center, because God is love, it is written, and they that dwell in love dwell in God and God in them. And so it's through opening to this love centered right where we are and moving into this now moment, you see, because so many times we hang out in regrets of the past or fears for the future, but the I am happens in the moment. God is not the I was or the I will be. God is the great I am.
What would you say to people, though, who say, I can almost sense cortisol levels in people going up and people listening to this. Self-love, love, be in the moment. I need to keep going. I need to keep doing. There's this, it almost seems like a fear of annihilation if I stop and pause for a moment.
Well, that's probably true, and also because people have received so little assistance in cultivating the inner life that they don't know what to do when they do get still. And that's why I wrote this book, is to help people understand a new view of reality and cultivate the inner life. And also, the third part of the book is how to handle some of the most difficult things in life, whether it's change or disease or problems or all those kinds of things as well.
For myself, I have to say, honestly, since we were discussing before, I've been through a couple pretty serious, near-death experiences myself, and I've come out viewing these things as gifts. I loved reading the later parts of your book because I think you express how these challenges are not necessarily, they're not even close to what we think they are.
Right, because we judge them from our limited perceptions and from material viewpoints. But if we understand, for instance, change, that change is an aspect of life's unfoldment, and actually change is birthing something. My whole approach to a situation of change, whether it's a change in my job or my relationships or whatever it might be, or even in my body, if I see it as birthing some new phase or some new opportunity, then I relate to that change entirely differently, and new creative juices come forth. I have a sense of confidence where there are, instead of a sense of dejection, And so one of the aspects of this book is that the way we perceive things is our biggest challenge. It's not so much what's going on in our life, is how do I view it? What do I believe? How am I thinking about these situations? If we can take a look at that and shift those ways of thinking and believing and judging of situations, we tap into greater power and possibility for ourselves.
I never thought about it, but your book could be a bit of reprogramming.
Yeah, well, it is, because we are programmed to judge according to appearances and to judge the most negative viewpoint of appearances. And that's our default. And unless we intervene on that default, it always takes us down the road of negation and blockage and impoverishment. It always does.
Can you tell us about your journey away from Mile High?
What do you tell me a little more about?
You spent I believe it was 4 years away from Denver.
Oh yeah. Well, I was an associate minister supporting a wonderful man, Fred Vogt, who was the senior minister, and I'd done that for 10 years. But sometimes life taps you on the shoulder and says, "This is complete," and of course that is often resisted when this happens to us because we don't know what's happening next. And there's a chapter in the book called "This Uncertainty is Magic," and that may be where I tell that story, come to think of it. And so when I was wise enough to heed that tapping on the shoulder and tell Fred, I've done 10 years here with you as an associate. I think I need to spread my wings and try something else. And he was so supportive. And And so I did. A job came along. When we're really ready to make the leap, something comes along.
Yep.
And I took the job, and immediately I entered into a really difficult 4-year journey because I hated the new job. And I started grieving the loss of Mile High, my former job, and I thought I had it all, and I made a stupid mistake. And you know how we judge things where we first land.
Negative self-talk, too.
That's exactly right. And I grieved, and I know I wasn't pleasant to be around. But, during that 4 years then, things began to happen. My wife, Erica, and I did a bunch of deepening in our relationship that really would have been difficult to do at my home base of Mile High, and other opportunities to work in other large ministries that grew me, challenged me, came along. And then 4 years later, Fred called again. He said, I'm ready to retire, and I think this has always been the place this is your church. Come on back if you choose to, and I did. And really, what I use that as a metaphor for is that, we have to be willing sometimes to go into the wilderness in our lives. And
I like it.
Go through the dark times of our lives, because a greater transformation often is growing us. And we need to trust those times. And there are times I faltered in that trust. I thought I had screwed up royally. But actually, the truth was, it was a perfect scenario for my evolution. I don't know if I could have been an effective senior minister if I had just gone from being an associate right into being a senior. I went away, and I went on my wilderness journey, and I grew, and I became, and then I came back the same but different. And so sometimes life brings us those things. I bet that's happened for our listeners, too.
I think that's what Jessica and we went off to Maui for a little less than 4 years, and now we're back on the mainland. And in the beginning, because she actually got quite sick, we're going, what in the world are we doing? We're in paradise and she's sick. So something's off. And at some point, first off, we knew we needed to leave, but we said we can see a lot of changes. And so this has been really obscenely difficult. But something great is going to come out of it, and we could tell how much we'd grown. So I'm picturing the conversation that you must have been having with your wife. At some point, they're saying, wait a second, we've grown quite a bit.
Yeah, we did. And I wouldn't trade that time, which was extraordinarily painful, nearly as painful as when I got dumped at age 30 by that lady. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. It made me more of the person and the minister that I am. But I think this is a key thing for people listening, is that very often we resist the evolutionary flow of our lives. And there comes a time, there's a chapter in the book called This Journey, meaning our life journey, is surrender. There does come a time when it's so powerful, it's essential for us to surrender to what's next, because life wants that what's next.
What does what does that mean? I mean, it's at this point in my life, I'm going around going, I surrender, I surrender. So
what for me, surrendering is realizing that I don't attain my highest good by trying to control everything. That there is a greater wisdom trying to work its way through me, and a greater guidance. And I also believe, Michael, that every one of us is on a soul journey on this planet. We've come into our bodies, incarnated onto this planet, to achieve certain things, to experience certain things, along a larger, longer soul journey, an eternal soul journey, actually. And so, we situate things in our life, and yet there's this underlying and usually not realized soul journey that's trying to continue to unfold. But we try to bracket everything down and resist change when something in us is saying, come on, you came here to do this in such a... For me, I know I came here, Michael, to open my heart, to discover the power of the heart center. I came here to challenge myself, to grow spiritually. And we seek security, but actually our security is best realized in change and in risk.
Ooh, okay, explain that one.
Well, there's a chapter in the book called This Risk is Greatness, and there's this evolutionary initiative in every one of us. And there are times when, in taking risks, we have the opportunity to realize more of who we really are. And the key thing about risks is the most important thing is how we grow during the risks, not how things turn out. But again, when we're insecure and we're into security and all that stuff, for us, in order to take a risk, we almost always demand that there be guarantees that things are going to turn out okay. Well, when I first went in the experience of leaving Mile High that you mentioned,
Yep.
where I first landed, I didn't think I'd done well at all. I was messed up. I was upset. But you see, I was in the very process of cultivating who I was going to be, and so when we take a risk, it doesn't matter how things turn out. The most important thing is to determine that we're going to learn, we're going to get value, and we're going to keep on going. And inevitably, we take those risks. We find ourselves becoming more of who we have intended to become, and we attract ultimately our good anyway.
It almost sounds like this is so cliche, but the greater risk is not to take the risk. That's not living.
Absolutely, because the risk is then that we don't find our true fulfillment. We don't manifest our true light. We don't have the kind of needful experiences that evolve us and bring us lasting growth and joy.
I love it when you talk about your story about when you were first getting into ministry and you started. I guess it was. Please explain it. You had left one church and were growing a new trying to buy this building, a church with your congregation.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I was in my first ministry 3 years in Portland, Oregon. And it was a very tiny group, and we kind of grew because we loved each other. They had to listen to some of the worst sermons in the world.
Oh, no.
Sea legs, but nonetheless, they knew I loved them. They knew I was sincere. And we grew a little bit, but we got kicked out of a Masonic temple that we were meeting in because they didn't want to open on Sundays anymore. And so we were searching for a place, and we found an old Christian Science building that we could renovate and buy relatively inexpensively, but we had to put a down payment on it. And then we were given 90 days to generate $80,000 for the next payment, and then we would go. We would make monthly payments from there on out, and we could easily do the monthly payments. But that $80,000 was a big deal for a congregation of like 120 people or so. So we fundraisers and every kind of fundraiser you could imagine. And by the end of that assigned time period, we had only raised $60,000.
And did you think, well, 80,000, it will magically appear? What was your trust, your belief, your faith system saying at that point?
You know, all you got to do when you set a goal like that is accept that there is a way.
Yep.
You may not know what that way is, and it'll probably be different than you think. But you just got to. Well, it's like Richard Bach wrote. You must begin by starting at the end, and knowing that you've already got it. So at any rate, we did all that stuff, and here we were, $60,000 short at the end of that time, and I had to get up on Sunday and tell them we hadn't achieved our goal, and I felt so miserable about that. I thought, my God, I failed them. They're going to be dejected. Probably the church will begin to splinter off. We didn't do it. How can I lead them spiritually? And then all of a sudden, the real truth came clear to me. I realized how much community we had built, how much love had been flowing as people got excited and they did projects and they gave their all. And we had come together like we had never come together. We were a tight group. This thing had already made us a better spiritual community than we'd ever been. And I thought, oh my God, the fact that we're not getting the buildings is an afterthought. We have done wonderful things. We've attracted some new people. We're bonded. So I got up in the next day. That's what I told them. I said, we may not be getting this building, but I'm so proud of who we are, and we'll attract the next right thing. And we have created a beautiful community. Whether it's a physical church right now, that remains to be seen. Well, then you read the rest.
Talk about a reframing.
Yeah, and everybody, there were tears, and everybody was hugging each other, and we went away with a win. And then the next Tuesday, 2 days later, after that Sunday, I took some boxes over to the church to clean out my office. And some of the guys the next day were going to clean out all our equipment out of the building. And I went into the office space, and there was an envelope on the floor, and I picked it up, and it was just a white envelope. And I opened it, and inside was a cashier's check for $20,000, the remaining amount we needed.
Woohoo!
And I never could find out who gave us that. To this day, I have no idea. It was just a cashier's check with no identification on it. And, so sometimes serendipity reveals ways and means we know not of.
So if you're listening, if an audience member is listening to this, it's a question that people are, I think, continuously asking. I know I've asked it a lot. You feel that you're supposed to go one way. Maybe your intellect is pulling you another way. Your heart is telling you, no, this is the way to go. How do you go from that place of belief to a place of knowing? Is there a way to even do that?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got to be honest with ourselves that as we deal with life situations and the twists and turns, there'll be times when we doubt. It's like in the Bible, the one guy said to Jesus, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. It's like we bring a certain level of believing to the table, but as we deal with things, we've got to keep stoking the fire, you know. And so that's why I wrote this book. That's why there's so many resources out there. Sometimes we need help to stay the course, keep our vision alive, to keep believing. I don't think anybody's meant to go it alone. So if a listener's got a big dream and you know, don't get down on yourself if you have moments of doubt or moments of wondering. Just find means of support. Get inspirational material, read it, spend some time quietly, affirming that you're being guided, and resources are coming your way, opportunities are coming your way, and you're available to be guided to them. And that's the program that can help us deepen and grow.
How do we, you mentioned earlier heart chakra and opening your heart chakra, and it seems to me that if you're going down this path, I can feel our hearts aching already. I think that's called fear.
Yeah.
How do we open up to be receptive to that?
Well, there's in the book at the very end, there's a heart-opening exercise that one could read through and then do. I think the most important thing is to understand that when fear shows up in our life, and then there's a chapter called This Fear is Friend, that fear is a friend cueing us that we're not centered in our hearts. Because there's that phrase from the Bible also, perfect love casts out fear. So fear is a natural thing in our life. It's going to be there from time to time, and quite often, in fact, especially if we're doing big things. So fear taps us on the shoulder and says, you know, your power zone is love. Your power zone is passion for your dream. Your true power is your love. Get back into your heart. Stay in your heart, and you'll be able to keep going. And you still may be afraid, but you've got to keep in your heart. So that's what fear can do for us. It can actually assist us in being centered in our hearts. So everybody can open their hearts. It's simply relaxing and visualizing that heart center, surrendering to it, and just hanging in with that a few sessions, and all of a sudden this wave of energy comes over us and can begin a healing process. Now, I will say this also.
Yes.
There's a chapter in the book called This Conflict is Forgiving, or Forgiveness. Very oftentimes, en route to becoming a heart-open person, we have to take on our forgiveness agenda.
What does that mean? And is that mean, because one of the themes we haven't really touched on here that I think is so important is understanding self-love, and I think along with that is self-forgiveness. Yeah,
and truly, forgiving is there's so much confusion about it. It's not forgetting. You can never forget anything that's happened to you. It's all stored in your memory. It's not condoning what was done and saying, oh, it was okay, they did what they did, or I did what I did. It's not condoning. It's not absolving somebody else as though you're getting on your high pedestal of superiority and saying, I forgive you. It's none of those misguided things. Forgiving is setting myself free. Forgiving is letting go of the idea that anger and hate against somebody else is getting me anywhere. Forgiving is also realizing that there's a larger story than the original incident. For me, when I was dumped by that lady, when I entered into forgiving her, I realized that the larger story was about my journey into being an open-hearted person. And so...
And that's presence or mindfulness, to be able to step back from that and see that there's something else being written.
And ultimately, forgiving is loving ourselves enough to let go of our attachment to that pain and trust in our greatness. Sometimes we stay attached to old wounds because we aren't loving ourselves fully. If we love ourselves, we can let go of our attachment to the past and start living in the present. So it is absolutely tremendous self-love, and I've got a whole chapter on that.
It's interesting. You talk about at age 30 this occurred to you, and when I had my first near-death experience. And I just interviewed PMH Atwater, who's interviewed close to 5,000 people with near-death experiences.
Yeah.
She said 77% of, and it's something you talk about near-death experiences a little bit in your book. 77% of people who've gone through them end up in divorce, and only 2 weeks after my first experience, I was also engaged. We were just about to announce our engagement. And if you can see where this is going, and I'm going to say a big mighty woohoo, because I met my loving wife Jessica only because I went through that experience, and it was really weird. The near-death experience, you're like, life is great, life is special, life is wonderful, and all of a sudden the person you're planning on spending the rest of your life with evaporates on you, and you're going, what happened?
Well, basically, I believe that we always attract to ourselves at the level of our consciousness, at the level of where we have grown.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a transformative experience, and you see beyond the veil. Everything expands, and you're different. We're all different. I think that happened to me on that lawn at age 6. And so, what was right for you before that may not be right when you take a quantum leap of growth.
I think I would even go it a step further. It was right for me. I'm big into I have to say the mantra of kind, gentle, easy, good, because I tend to, in the past, not hear the lessons quietly, and so God or universe source keeps turning up the volume and finally grabbing 2x4s for me. and I don't think the 2x4s are necessary at this point.
No, we often need them, but they're not necessary.
So, but I'm both very thankful for them, and I know that those were very. The person was attracted into my life to help. I call the time the festivities, to help bring me to my knees, to that I surrender place, which allows me in that I surrender place to be more than I was possible before.
Absolutely. You've put that beautifully. Beautifully.
So let's dive just a little bit deeper down this. First off, there's a story in your book I absolutely love. Tiny little story about rats and an airplane.
Oh, yeah. The story about the guy who took out, he was a collector of planes. He took out his old plane, one of those that's covered in canvas, and painted, and he got it spruced up it was at the end of the winter, and he got it all spruced up and tuned up and ready to go flying. And he got that all done, and he taxied and took off, and he was exhilarated to be back up in his beloved airplane. And then all of a sudden, the control throttle, it didn't even have a wheel, it was one of those stick throttles, began to shake, and he couldn't stop it. And he didn't know what was going on. He tried several things, and then he shuddered to realize, what if there's some sort of animals in the back chewing on the cords that run from this control stick to the rudders, and
that's scary.
And boy, if they succeed, I'm done for. So in that moment, realizing that, he pulled back on that stick, and he put the plane in this steep climb, as steep as it could, and he went higher and higher and higher until even in the high altitude he was beginning to get groggy. And then all of a sudden the vibration in the lines and in the throttle ceased, and he leveled out, and then he came on down and made a safe landing. And then he opened up a compartment in the back of the plane and looked in, and there were 3 or 4 rats in the back, in the tail of the plane, and that were dead from asphyxiation, that had been chewing on the cord. And the control line actually was almost severed. And so anyway, he breathed a sigh of relief. But the moral
goosebumps
of the story is the beautiful part. The moral is, if you want to stop the rats from chewing at your control cords, you've got to climb higher.
You got to let go of that fear.
Yeah, and I love that, because there's a lot of forces and peoples and things that'll start chewing at the control cords of our lives, and if we let them keep doing that, we're going to have trouble. But we got to climb higher in our awareness to stop that.
So, what are 3 takeaway pieces of advice you'd give people on seeking more joy in their lives?
All right. Number one.
Yes.
Decide that you are a beautiful and a valuable person, and that your self-worth is never going to be achieved by what you do in your life or what you get. Decide that you need no more evidence, that you are absolutely a being of essential worth, no matter what your past has been, no matter what problems are going on in your life now. Make the decision that you are re-embracing yourself unconditionally right now. And number two, stop demanding that desired outcomes give you joy.
Ooh, let go of the control. Let go of the controlled stick.
Yeah. Stop demanding that your joy come from more money. Stop demanding that your joy come from people being the way you want them to be. Stop controlling people. Stop demanding that outer achievements bring you joy, and start tapping into a joy that is deep within you. It's a deep joy and a deep and wonderful power within you. And in that process, you can then begin to open your heart to life. And then, no matter what comes down your path, number three, what comes down your path, open up to a higher perspective about it. And that's what the third part of my book is all about, 9 portals of transformation. And in those 9 portals of transformation, when you come along and there's fear, there are problems, or judgment, or conflict, or disease, or change, or uncertainty, desires, risks, when those things come along, seek the higher view so that you don't get pulled down into the lesser approaches to life. We've all tried that, and that's why I wrote that part of the book, is to give transformational viewpoints on some of these really tough times in life. So that'd be my thing. And just remember, you are a being of joy. Accept it. Start living from a joy that's within you, and life will shift. Life will shift.
I love it. I love it. There's a theme that keeps coming across universally in the people that I interview for this show, which is open up your heart, open up your heart, open up your heart.
That's right. That's right. It's changed my life. I'm not the person I was back then, and I'm so grateful.
I love it. So with that said, this is a question we ask all of our guests. What brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
What brings me the greatest happiness is when I connect my heart with other hearts, whether it's my grandchildren or my wife, my incredible wife, my kids, the people I care about. What brings me the greatest woohoo is heart connections.
I love it. Like the one we're having right now.
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
Thank you, Roger. So where can people, I think this Life is Joy, this is no small thing to say. I think everybody should get this book because it is, for me, it is a reprogramming. So a lot of this stuff I've read before, I've heard before. There's no such thing as hearing it too much. A lot of it, on the other hand, is new ways to reframe and look at things. And I think that's so important, because when you get in the thick of it, when you're in the mud, to realize that's not mud, that's gold. That's
right. That's right. Well, the book, This Life is Joy, Discovering the Spiritual Laws to Live More Powerfully, Lovingly, and Happily, can be gotten at Amazon in either print form or in a Kindle book. I kind of recommend it in print form because if anybody's like me, I like to write things and make notes to myself, and it would perhaps be useful for that.
Yeah, and I'm a tactile guy. I've realized there's a different. I read for our show. I read at least 5-6 books a week, and even though a lot of them come to me on Kindle and I can dive through and get through them quickly that way, there's something about that tactical sensation of having that in my hand, of feeling the pages, that brings, maybe I call it the energy of the book to me more.
Yeah, especially soulful books, or books that are about our growth. Those are the ones to really have in physical form, I think.
I would agree completely. So your website, the URL?
Yeah, rogerteel.com, or my church website, and there are many more resources about me and this teaching on my church site. That's milehighchurch.org, and that Mile High is H-I, milehighchurch.org.
Excellent.
And rogerteel.com.
Oh, go ahead.
And rogerteel.com.
And I'd recommend people check out the YouTube videos. Check out Roger speaking. I think it's something very special. The words just seem to flow. So I check that out. We'll have more resources. We'll have more information, URLs, and also a link for the book as well on our website too. That's inspiranationshow.com. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, discover your inner joy, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Roger.
Oh, you're very welcome. I enjoyed that. You're a kick to talk to.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my treat. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this great work in the world.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also leave your comments, have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspiranationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!